My name is Earl Hoffman. I'm the president of the Hillel Advisory Board, and I'm here to welcome you to the 5th annual Latke Hamantaschen debate. Thanks. It's become really quite a long-awaited event in the Twin Cities community here. I want to take this opportunity to thank Harold and Mickey Smith for sponsoring this program here. We really appreciate their support. And I also want to thank our committee members for putting together an excellent panel of participants. Our committee members, and I'll ask you just to kind of stand or wave your hand, are Marty Dworkin, Riv-Ellen Prell, Sarah Stein, and D. Marcos Vittel. There we go. Now just for a couple of brief announcements. First of all, I hope you all look at your program and look at the back of your program. Some upcoming events. I want to mention Dr. Ruth Westheimer will be here on campus at a lecture that's being sponsored by Hillel. It'll be at the brand new Kaufman Union. So it's a chance not only to hear Dr. Ruth, but also to see the Kaufman Union that everybody's been reading about and talking about in the Twin Cities. Tickets are $36 a person and help support Hillel's programming. And in that context, I just want to say that support like that and your support through other contributions really helps fund, provides our financial support and also a lot of just the wonderful program we do. The Latke Hamantaschen debate is just one event. We also have free Shabbat dinners for students throughout the year. We have an alternative spring break this year to Argentina, and I think a number of our students are going. Participation in Birthright Israel. We had over 60 students go on the Birthright Israel trip in the last 3 years. Also sponsors the faculty and grad brunch series and a full calendar of cultural events, social events, dances, and community service activities. So we really appreciate your support. And we hope you can make this Dr. Ruth lecture on Sunday, March 2nd. It should be a real fun event and an enjoyable lecture. Also, too, on the back, we want to give a little advertisement for Newkirk's Kosher Cafe at Hillel. Have really delicious meals there. So if you're around campus during the time the school's in session and around lunchtime, please come in and have a sandwich. They have great deli sandwiches and other meals, some vegetarian meals as well. Well, without further ado, as president, I want to say let the games begin here. But first, I want to introduce David Pillay, a second-year student at the Carlson School of Management, who will perform an original song for us. And when David becomes famous, I want everybody to know you heard him here first.
Famous? I'm doing this for the Latkes and the Hamantaschen. Gotta make it even. This is a song I wrote last week because yes, that's true, last week. I've been having some problems. See, I can't decide which one I like more, so I thought expressing it in a song would be, would help me make up my mind. And before I begin, I also want to say that Hillel has been very valuable to me and all the students, and without them, I wouldn't know how to be Jewish on campus, because I'm from North Dakota, so. Anyway, let's play the song. 'Cause when I'm eating you, your grease just fills my soul. But I can't decide to go baked or fried. Latke Hamantaschen, which is better? Your stomach's growling, that's why you're here tonight. Grab a plate, stuff yourself, it's our Jewish rite, yeah. A Hamantaschen is so sugary sweet. When I take a bite, juicy fruit excretes. But I can't decide to go baked or fried. Latke Hamantaschen, which is better? Your stomach's growling, that's why you're here tonight. Grab a plate, stuff yourself, it's our Jewish rite, and yeah. Women, don't hesitate, you could use the weight. Men are bald and fat, they're already bald and fat, so eat more latkes and get more bald and fat. What's wrong with that? Sorry. While you're sitting, think about Hamantaschen. Oh, the latke, which is better? Your stomach's growling, that's why you're here tonight. Grab a plate, stuff yourself, it's our Jewish rite, yeah, yeah. Your stomach's growling, so eat a Hamantaschen or latke. Thank you.
Thank you, David. My name is Amy Olson, and I'm the Executive Director of Hillel, the Jewish Student Center at the University of Minnesota. The Latke Hamantaschen debate was resurrected, if you'll pardon the expression, at the University of Minnesota in the second year of the reign of Mark Yudof. You may recall that President Yudof was the announced moderator of each of the 4 previous debates, and he actually made it to 2 of them. Therefore, his move to Austin only meant for us that we knew more than 2 hours in advance that he would not be the moderator tonight. And so we are very fortunate this evening to inaugurate a new moderator for the proceedings, Professor Kenneth Keller. Earlier backstage, we anointed his head with oil and sprinkled him with poppy seeds. Those of you who attended the second annual Latke Hamantaschen debate in this very room 3 years ago will recall the masterful job Professor Keller did in defending the latke. He assures me, however, he assures me, however, that he will be thoroughly unbiased and open-minded this evening. You probably did not know that for Professor Keller's dedicated scientific research over the years on fluid mechanics, such as how much liquid is necessary to make a perfect latke or Hamantaschen, Professor Keller received the American Institute of Chemical Engineers Food, Pharmaceutical, and Bioengineering Division Award. It is said in Pirkei Avot, chapter 3, verse 3, that if 2 or more sit together and no words of Torah are spoken between them, they are a session of scoffers. And so, to spare us from that designation, for each of the past 4 years, I have been able to share with you some Torah on the origins of the Latke Hamantaschen debate. The Torah portion for this week is different from any that have coincided with the previous debates. And yet, Astonishingly enough, this Torah portion, Ki Tisa, also reveals the divine secrets of the Latke Hamantaschen hood. Moses is commanded to take certain spices, such as flowing myrrh, sweet cinnamon, and sweet calamus, which Rashi comments were later used in the original Persian recipes for Hamantaschen, and olive oil, a key ingredient in latkes. In verse 29 of chapter 30, it says of these ingredients, "Whoever touches them shall be holy. Hanogea bahem yikdash." Now, if we take the numerical value of yikdash, shall be holy, count along with me, Yud 10, Kuf 100, Daled 4, Shin 300, we get 414. If we subtract from that the numerical value of Keller, Kuf 100, Lamed 30, Resh 200, we are left with 84. Coincidence? I think not. That the numerical value of the word yilmod, will learn, Yud 10, Lamed 30, Mem 40, Daled 4, is exactly 84. Which proves, it proves categorically that learning this evening with Ken Keller about latkes and Hamantaschen will lead us all to be holy. As a special treat, we will set the mood for tonight's proceedings with a musical introduction from Hillel's newly formed, as of last week, we did a lot of things last week, newly formed vocal ensemble, the Jazzy Jews. And following the 4 presentations from our esteemed faculty, the Jazzy Jews will return for a closing number, after which you are all invited to join us in the hallway outside for latkes and Hamantaschen.
Hamantaschen, Hamantaschen, are they good? Are they good? I could eat a million
It's on. The rest of the evening is downhill. But let me thank you and add my welcome to all of you to this 5th annual University of Minnesota Hillel food fight. I am, of course, honored to have been asked to moderate this debate, I think. Amy has pointed out that it has been a tradition in the past to invite former President Mark Yudof to take on the responsibility. She also pointed out it was not exactly a tradition for him to show up. You know, affairs of state, physical injuries, the other equivalents of the college student's grandmother who dies conveniently and often seem to keep him away. I do remember one year in which he did show up, and a colleague of ours, who I'd rather not name, but whose initials are High Berman, challenged his neutrality. Now, the grounds were clear enough. His predilection for flour-based pancakes was well known, and some, those who belong to the "a pancake is a pancake" school, might view that as suggesting a bias for one side in this debate. President Yudof responded and explained to him, "Shut up." Ruled him out of order, a condition which did not distinguish him from most of the other members of the audience that evening. And he lurched onward. However, a back injury kept him away the next year. And while we don't have substantiation of this, there are ugly rumors that his recent remove to the University of Texas was related to the fact that he'd run out of excuses for not showing up at this debate. Now, I want to avoid his fate, and so I actually wanted to make mention of something which Amy has already mentioned, and it's to clear up a certain matter. Some of the regulars here may remember that on an earlier occasion, many years ago, I extolled the virtues and the importance of the latke in this very forum. And I confess it to you. I confess it today. I can only plead youth and inexperience. Now, advancing age has taught me the wisdom of balance, if not neutrality, in all things. And I suggest to you that I believe I can go forward tonight with my assignment, chastened by my previous rush to judgment, and just incredibly open-minded. Now, one of our other participants has a more difficult problem. Charles Muscaplat put himself forward as a disinterested moderator last year, and this year intends to speak for the Hamantaschen. What are we to believe? Is it possible that his assertion of neutrality last year was insincere? I make no accusations, but we will watch him very carefully this evening. But they're all small problems. The great joy of the evening is its quintessentially academic character. We're able to debate a topic with the absolutely clear understanding that the outcome will not in any way settle the question. And that, in any event, it doesn't matter in the least. We'll argue the question again next year, as we did last year, and God willing, indefinitely into the future. Now, Dante may have thought that such infinite repetition was a characteristic of hell, but we in academia recognize it as heaven. So, on to the business at hand. My job, according to Amy Olson, is to introduce our four debaters, telling as much of the truth as I must, but no more. And before I do the kinds of complete introductions that they deserve and certainly will get, I do want to quickly name our participants and remark on the great care that the committee has put into this. Now, if I can work this, it's video mute you press, which does that. And so I'd like to introduce for the latke. We have Naomi Sheeman, philosopher. We have Gary Gardner, horticulturist. For the Hamantasch, we have Amy Kaminsky, feminist scholar, and Chuck Muscaplat, agriculture poobah, a term I will explain. Now, I want to call your attention first to the obvious, the gender balance. Very careful. The committee is to be congratulated. I also point out that we have 2 representatives of our Women's Studies program, 1 on each side, and 2 members of the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences, 1 on each side. 2 of our participants in this, you can't see, did their advanced work at private institutions. 2 did their work at public institutions. Here, however, I have to admit that the private school graduates are both defending the Latke, and the public school graduates are both defending the Hamantasch. I have no idea what that might mean. All right, now each speaker is going to have 15 minutes to make his or her case, and at the end of the debate, we'll make an attempt to determine a winning side by the age-old method of audience applause, and I will render a Solomonic judgment of which side received the greatest endorsement, which the winners can revel in and the losers can blame on my increasingly imperfect hearing. Then we will have a musical interlude, and before the crowd gets rowdy, we'll adjourn to the area outside the auditorium where Latkes and Hamantaschen will cheer the winners and comfort the losers. So let's press on. Once more with feeling, the Latke Hamantasch debate. Let the games begin. Wait. We've agreed on an order here. I think actually the committee agreed on it. And the first speaker is Charles C. Muscaplat, PhD, who carries the title, hold your breath, Vice President for Agricultural Policy, Dean of the College of Agricultural, Food, and Environmental Sciences, Director of the Minnesota Agricultural Experiment Station, Professor of Medicine and Microbiology, Professor of Animal Science in the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences. I'm told that with the budget rescissions, he's going to add 3 vice presidencies, 2 deanships, a professorship, and custodial responsibilities. Dr. Muscaplat was, for many years in the private sector, as Vice President of Medical Affairs at MGI Pharma, and held other senior management positions, was instrumental in bringing several biotechnology and biopharmaceutical products to the market between 1983 and 1999, including the synthetic Latke. He was a faculty member at the University of Minnesota. He actually has a degree in chemistry and mathematics, and then a PhD in veterinary microbiology. God knows what he thinks is in some of these products, but in any event, he has been a technical consultant, an entrepreneur, and I have to tell you quite seriously, a person who has brought a large new dimension to what agriculture has been at this school for a long time. A welcome, open session. We do not yet offer a course in either Hamantaschen or Latkes, but perhaps that too will change. Dr. Muscaplat.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. As they say, they looked for the best moderator they could find, but they got Ken Keller instead. Nice to be here. I think it's a great pleasure to be here tonight. And it is a challenge, and I think Amy Kaminsky and I take this very seriously with our worthy opponents and friends. We have every intention of winning. And if I think about it, that you do have to choose at the end. Because as the old Talmudic saying goes, with one tuchus you can't ride 2 horses. And as Professor Keller said, that I am the Dean of Agricultural, Food, and Environmental Sciences, so I know this stuff. So you have to believe me. And what's more, my mom told me, and there's my mother. Raise your hand. And my mom made these Hamantaschen for me so that I could, she told me lots of things. She told me that Hamantaschen are great. And I wonder, is there any chance to have the lights turned off in front? She told me that Hamantaschen are great, and everything important in the world stems from Hamantaschen. Hamantaschen are a family event. And there's my niece and my sister and her new baby. And we owe everything in this world to Hamantaschen. And I'll tell you that most of the things we think are vitally important for our health and welfare of the world, and most of modern inventions derived from the Hamantaschen. My mother told me that Hamantaschen are good and Latkes are bad. And they make your mouth water. And they make your mouth water, and you know, that's a good thing, as Martha Stewart says. But what you didn't know, that in ancient times, you know, mouth-watering was the scientific study of Pavlovian response. And how many of you remember that Ian Pavlov did the studies on conditioned response, that when dogs were exposed to things they liked, they salivated? But you didn't know that he did his studies with Hamantaschen. That Pavlov took these dogs and he put Hamantaschen in front of them, and they would take a bite and they would salivate. And he confirmed that Hamantaschen are mouth-watering. And he published a paper, and we all know the Pavlovian response of salivation in response to conditioned stimuli. And the ancient Greeks, there was an ancient class of Greeks called Pythagoreans, and they developed theorems for a living. And how did they develop theorems? Well, they studied objects and created mathematical formula, and the Hamantaschen is a triangle. And of course, Pythagoras developed the mathematical formulas so that my mother could make Hamantaschen perfect using the formulas here on the slide. These theorems were discovered on ancient Babylonian tablets with little Hamantaschen carved in the rock. And then some years later, people needed to carry things. So in the ancient hieroglyphics, people found a diagram for the Hamantaschen and said, gee, this is the world's first container. You can see how you make a circle of the dough, put something in the middle, fold the dough over, and that's a container. But if you think about it, it's more than just a container, it's the first envelope. And here, in the ancient Babylonian diagrams, was a model of a drawing how to make an envelope and really put agricultural products inside. And so this is an envelope, a container. And in the further ancient archaeological, many different Hamantaschen designs have been discovered in the archaeological record. Who knows? We could have wound up with square Hamantaschen or pentagonal or hexagonal. By the luck of the draw, Pythagoras developed the formula that gave us the triangular Hamantaschen. And since they were really the first envelope, it really gave rise to the saying, pushing the envelope. And so without the Hamantaschen, no one would ever to say, push the envelope in any subject, be it aerospace or academia. And of course, since once you're on your way to a container like an envelope, it's a short step to get to a cardboard box. And there, the saying, thinking outside the box was invented. Thinking outside the box, pushing the envelope, we owe it all to Hamantaschen. And if you think about everything we know about our diet, we learned from the food pyramid, all the different 7 food groups. Trust me, I know. The breads, the fruit group, the vegetable group, and so on. It looks like a Hamantaschen. Therefore, the food pyramid was modeled after the Hamantaschen because the Hamantaschen contains the food groups. It's a well-balanced diet. It's the first fruit bar. Contains many food groups. It's high energy and provides regularity. And if you think about the versatility, you can actually make a map of the United States using shapes of Hamantaschen. So you can use it for regularity. You can use it for map making and geography and cartography. There's nothing that the Hamantaschen can't do. The Bermuda Triangle was invented after the Hamantaschen. What we know about all these lost ships, they went to Hamantaschen heaven. And if you think about it, they are the first health food. They're modern dietary supplement. The Hamantaschen is synonymous with prunes, which is synonymous with milk of magnesia. It promotes regularity. And how many people saw the movie Cool Hand Luke 2? In the first one, he ate hard-boiled eggs, but in the second one, he ate Hamantaschen. And when they took an x-ray of Cool Hand Luke, they saw all the Hamantaschen in his colon. Is there any physicians here? Can you vouch for the fact that this is an x-ray of a man who ate too many Hamantaschen? And you can see the bulk in the diet. And just a few more Hamantaschen and this person will be cleaned out. And look at, by contrast, here's a magnetic resonance image of a latke eater. And look what happens to this. You eat too many latkes and you get little latke-shaped things all over your intestines. Look at a latke, a latke. It leaves a residue all over your body. So you eat those latkes, you get these circular things all over your body when you have a magnetic resonant image. Who wants those latke-shaped things all over your body? And look at the brains of people who eat it. A normal... People who eat Hamantaschen have normal brains, but if you eat too many latkes, you get a brain like Homer Simpson. Prunes are full of antioxidants that may slow the aging process. You can look young, versus if you eat a latke, you'll look old. And at the 16th Maccabiah Games in Israel, they thought so highly of the health benefits of Hamantaschen that that's what they gave for the awards. No gold, silver, and bronze medals. Everyone got a Hamantaschen. It was very important. Triangles are also, the shape of the Hamantaschen are much more versatile than the shapes of circles. Look what happens. You can make a circle out of triangles. It shows the versatility and the superiority of the triangle compared to the circle. And it's important in sports, too. Do you remember when someone said, Gordie Howe, how did you get to be such a good hockey player? He said, I always skate to where the Hamantaschen's going, not to where it is. And Vince Lombardi, the famous, whatever football team that was in Wisconsin, the Green Bay Packers, says the difference between a successful person and others is not the lack of strength, not the lack of knowledge, but the lack of Hamantaschen. And the Dead Sea Scrolls. There were some pictures I saw recently of the Dead Sea Scrolls, little bits. Here they are. And if you look carefully, they look a little bit like Hamantaschens. These little fragments were discovered in the desert in the caves near En Gedi in Israel. And they're triangular shaped, every one of them. They must have given rise to the thought of the triangle, which gave rise to the Hamantaschen. And you've all heard the word black holes. Well, in physics, we have a black hole, which is generally represented by the singularity of gravity. But if you look at the Hamantaschen and eat a couple, you feel like a black hole. It just goes in, it lays there like gravity. And it's got the black hole. Be a poppy seed or prune, it's a black hole. And you've all heard couch potatoes, right? Potatoes make latkes. We don't think highly of couch potatoes. You never heard of a couch Hamantaschen, now did you? Proving that Hamantaschen is superior to latkes because couch potato has a bad connotation. Proving Hamantaschen are better. You are what you eat. How many people have heard that you are what you eat? If you eat latkes, you become a potato shape. If you eat Hamantaschen, you become nice looking. Would you rather look like a potato or a Hamantaschen? And Betsy Ross. How many people remember Betsy Ross? George Washington said to Betsy, make a flag for our country. You didn't know that Ross was a Jewish name. The first flag she made had Hamantaschen. And George Washington said, God, I love you, but you got to have stars. So we almost had Hamantaschen flags, but just by a nick of time, George said stars. But there's health effects. If you eat fried foods, you could get cancer. Look at this latke eater. Recently, there's all kinds of warnings in the news on latkes and fried foods. You might get acrylamide. The FDA is warning everybody. And there's going to be warnings on latke mixes and oils. The Surgeon General determines that eating latkes can be hazardous to your health. It's in all the papers. But what's more important is that the Hamantaschen has served as a model for so many things in life. It's really the model of the ravioli, the model for the dumpling, the model for the pierogi, the model for the Bismarck. But it doesn't stop with food. The model foods can be for model buildings. The Hamantaschen is the model for the Louvre, for the ancient Mayan ruins, for the pyramids of Egypt, and for the Flatiron Building in New York City. Freud thought about Hamantaschen constantly. Whenever he was doing something, he would think, boy, I wish I had a Hamantaschen. And he even said in his famous writing, sometimes when I'm smoking a cigar, I'm just thinking about a Hamantaschen. You can make a Jewish star out of 6 Hamantaschen. The first rocket ship was inspired, as the nose cone was a Hamantaschen. And then I got to looking, gee, I looked at the Horn of Plenty, which is a symbol of fruits and vegetables and plenty. I never saw a Horn of Plenty with a latke in it. I looked on the internet for hours. I looked at hundreds and hundreds of Horns of Plenty, and I see all the ingredients for Hamantaschen, but I never see latkes, proving that they're not important in history. Albert Einstein loved Hamantaschen. If you remember his great theory of gravitational lenses and his theory of gravitational waves, he said he loves Hamantaschen because they stick to your stomach like gravity. The Godfather says, give me your Hamantaschen or give me your life. And Bill Clinton had a fancy for Hamantaschen. And you see, he said one time, maybe they won't see if I just take one. But he took 2. I saw him and I took this picture, and there he was. So as you can see, most of our world is dependent upon the Hamantaschen. Without it, we would have nothing. My mom told me, and my sister. Thank you.
What is always admirable in academic debate is a certain prudence in not going beyond your data. I wish you luck at the legislature, where you should do very well. Our next speaker is Naomi Sheeman. We've allowed our speakers to provide some of their own biographical material, but we haven't said we'd use it. Naomi Sheeman I'll certainly start in part. She's a New Yorker, which is obviously a very good thing, who's been happily living diasporically in Minnesota since 1979. I'll explain diasporically. But she is a professor of philosophy and women's studies and currently associate dean in the graduate school. And she spends a lot of time thinking, not diasporically, but philosophically, about food and how to understand what it means to be a secular Jew. Now, I have to have an aside, because this philosophical thinking, which sounds pretty good on the surface, I actually went to her website and found out the truth. Because on her website, the description is she's been especially treasured the permission she has as a philosopher to wander around on other people's disciplinary turf, getting a feel for what's going on, and then helping out or making trouble. She, of course, is now in the graduate school, where she hopes to study the connections between objectivity, trustworthiness, and individual and institutional commitments to social responsibility and social justice. Now, I spent time in the graduate school, and I don't think I noticed many of those things during that. But perhaps things have changed. Now, I also went there. Naomi is very well educated, and she got her degrees at Harvard, but if you actually go to her website, it doesn't say Harvard, it says Harvard, H-A-V-A-R-D, as we used to in New York say, Harvard, ha-ha. But she is, in fact, someone who has contributed mightily in scholarly terms. She's published a couple of essays on secular Jewry, one entitled Terminal Moraine, and another Queering the Center by Centering the Queer, Reflections on Transsexuals and Secular Jews, which I haven't read but probably should, or perhaps that's going to come up now in your discussion here. But no, she claims that her participation in this evening's debate is her first foray into the actual field of the philosophy of food. So we'll move from scientific reality to philosophical metaphysics.
Where is this? Can I carry this? I don't have a pocket. Okay. Well, let's see. I don't have any overheads or PowerPoint or anything like that on account of being a philosopher, and we don't do that. So I will try not to mess this amount of technology up. Well, why the latke? Well, it's better to approach this question from another angle. As is often the case in philosophy, the question as we first pose it is not the right question. So let's approach it from another angle. Why not the Hamantaschen? That still is not quite the right question. I think we'd be best off starting with the question, what accounts for the persistent and puzzling appeal of the Hamantaschen? Now, I want to suggest that the Hamantaschen is emblematic of a specifically modern phenomenon. Now, a bit about the word modern. It means different things in different contexts. Philosophers tend to have the oldest of a whole lot of things, and one of the things we have the oldest of is we have the oldest modern. Philosophers' modern goes back to the 17th century. So the Hamantaschen is emblematic of a specifically modern phenomenon, what I will call the scientistically housebroken mystery entity alternative, or a loser, and or to take the acronym formed by scientistically housebroken mystery entity alternative or loser, schmeal. Now, what that is an ultimately unsatisfying stand-in for the alluring but dangerous real. So not the real, but the schmeal. Now, examples of other schmeals are telephone sex and robot dogs. I assume you get a sense of a natural kind formed by those things. Then what it is about schmeals such as Hamantaschen, phone sex, and robot dogs is that they all claim, per impossibile, to meet deep needs without the risks, vulnerabilities, and poop scooping which accompany the corresponding real things. Now, in making such a claim, schmeals betray a studied ignorance of the depth of the appeal of the real. This point will become clearer as we go on. Now, what is the Hamantaschen a schmeal for? We know what phone sex is a schmeal for, and we know what robot dogs are a schmeal for, but what might the Hamantaschen be a schmeal for? Well, I take it that the answer is entirely obvious. The Hamantaschen is a schmeal for the Kreplach. The Kreplach is not derivative from the Hamantaschen. Rather, the Hamantaschen is the real of which the Kreplach is the schmeal. And the Kreplach and its ilk, namely wontons, ravioli, pelmeni, pierogi, gyros, empanadas, samosas, profiteroles, jelly donuts, and chocolate-covered cherries. That is, the Kreplach is a culturally pervasive culinary trope which goes literally from soup to nuts. That is, from soup dumplings, which you can discover in Chinese restaurants in Chinatown in New York, from which I am diasporically living in Minnesota, And those are dumplings in which, instead of the dumplings being in the soup is in the dumplings. So we have from soup, the soup dumplings, to nuts, obviously peanut M&Ms. Now, these real things of which the kreplach is our clear paradigmatic example, these are tropes for the visible outer concealing the hidden inner. The hidden inner being the real thing, the mystery, right? Now, this trope turns up elsewhere. For example, in the age-old question, is the refrigerator light on when the door is shut? Other places we find this similar question that juxtaposes the visible outside with the real hidden inside is in the Lockean, that is, as in John Locke, veil of perception, in which we have the juxtaposition of appearance and reality, or in the Cartesian dualism of the body and the mind, or, as Gilbert Ryle put it, the ghost in the machine. Now, to understand the way that this works, consider the following story. We have, probably familiar to a number of you, we have a young boy who is very, very terrified, one might say phobic, of kreplach. And his mother takes him off to see a psychologist to try to deal with his kreplach phobia. And the psychologist says the problem we have here is that there is a hidden inner, and he doesn't know what it is. So you take him home and you let him watch you make the kreplach, and he will see how that happens, and then he won't be frightened anymore. Sounds very sensible, very, clear. Okay, she takes him home. Next time she's making kreplach, she takes him into the kitchen, and she says, "Honey, sweetie, what am I doing? You're rolling out the dough. What's Mommy doing? You're putting a little bit of meat inside the dough. What's Mommy doing, sweetie? You're folding over one corner. What's Mommy doing? You're folding over another corner. What's Mommy doing? You're folding over a third corner. What's Mommy doing? Ay, kreplach." Okay. Now, the psychologist in this story embodies and expresses the modern scientific episteme, which would respond to, for example, another of our deep puzzles, the refrigerator light, by getting a very small person to curl up inside the refrigerator. Don't try this at home. Or perhaps by putting a remote control camera inside the refrigerator. Now, obviously, this misses the point. By making the invisibility of the inner a merely contingent matter of location, it misses the depth, the richness, the allure of the question about whether or not the light is on in the refrigerator when the door is closed. Now, thus, the scientistic, not scientific, I'm not bashing science, this is scientistic. The scientistic optimism that the hidden inner will yield its secrets to the scientist's deeper probing. What happens from this, if you really follow this through, reality becomes the little things buzzing around inside the big things, and the mind becomes the brain. And in other words, the kreplach becomes the Hamantasch, with its inner filling laid open to scrutiny, the mystery no longer a mystery but revealed. Now, for a brief psychoanalytic digression, Mae West asked on a certain celebrated occasion, "Are you happy to see me, or is that a pickle in your pocket?" Now, the potency of the necessarily hidden phallus is juxtaposed here with the prosaic contents of the pocket. Now, thus, the Hamantasch, which is, of course, Haman's pocket, demystifies the phallus by revealing it to be not even a penis, which would be bad enough, but some mushed up poppy seeds. End of psychoanalytic digression. We're back to philosophy now. Now, one problem with this, the Hamantasch's mix of scientistic optimism and New Age injunctions to let it all hang out is that it leaves the power of the mystery of the one big question intact. That is, we're left with the sense that if there were meaning, truth, or authors, all of those with capital letters, that is, the always not yet bitten into fillings, if there were these things, they would be the real thing. And the consequence of this attitude is notoriously leads to a sense of loss, which leads to melancholy and reactionary politics. Well, if we can't tame the power of the Kreplach, bring it under our rational control by replacing it with this Schmiel thing, the Hamantasch, how can we release its grip on us? Well, it's obvious that at this point we need to turn to the work of Ludwig Wittgenstein. And one of the things that he urges us is to break out of our one-sided diet of examples. We need a more fundamental shift. That is a shift to the Latke. Why the Latke? The question we began with. Well, the Latke has no sharp inner-outer dualism. It's non-dualistic. There is, of course, an outer crispiness, but that crispiness is a clear artifact of human labor and some hot oil. And that contrasts, importantly, with the mystification of labor that we find in the case of the Kreplach, produced by female labor, hidden away in the kitchen, brought out into public after its complete fabrication. Hence the psychologist's mistaken assumption that if the little boy, Latkephobic kids, Anyway. So we have the mystification of labor in the Kreplach by the hidden away female labor in the kitchen, and the mystification of labor in the case of the Hamantasch, since, as we all know, the natural habitat of the Hamantasch is a white cardboard box tied with thin string. Now, the ultimate forms of mystification are, of course, represented by soup dumplings and chocolate-covered cherries, the labor that goes into the making of which is utterly mysterious. Okay, now, the Latke, in addition to being non-dualistic and to revealing the presence of its artifactual nature, its social constructedness, is also performative. The Latke is performative in the sense that it is best when it is not abstracted from the context of its fabrication, which is another way of saying you should eat it while it's still hot. And as performative, the Latke is well suited for preparation by men, who it is well known will do things in the kitchen, provided that those things come with a certain degree of drama and flair. So that point contradicts the claim of one of my esteemed feminist colleagues, Elaine May, last year, that the Latke was unfeminist because it required women's labor. I have argued that its performative nature, in fact, makes it very well suited for male labor. Now, so, is the Latke merely flat? That is, does it present no questions? Does it have no inner life, no mystery? No, not at all. Rather, there are these questions, this mystery is expressed through what I want to call its homogeneous heterogeneity. That is, it is heterogeneous throughout, not divided into dualistic parts. Rather than having one big difference, the difference, pastry filling, the Latke is different throughout. And because of its homogeneous heterogeneity, it invites us to bring to it a heteroglossal array of queries, such as onions? The answer to that is yes. Another query, hand-graded or food processed? Well, that's a matter of debate, and there are risks to each. The risk with the food processor is the risk of going on too long and producing homogeneous homogeneity. The risk of hand grading is, of course, that one will scrape one's knuckles, and that gives rise to another question, namely, if you bleed into the potatoes, are they thereby flashing? And by association, one comes up with other questions. For example, what if the eggs are fertilized? And then we have other questions along those lines. How come there are some non-mammalial things that are flashing? I don't understand. I've never understood that. But anyway, leave that aside. And then, of course, the age-old question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And finally, there's another question that is posed by the latke if we place it in its full social and cultural context, and that's another age-old question. If you bring home a tree and you decorate it with stars that have 6 points on it, and with dreidels and with chocolate coins covered with gold paper, and you call it a Hanukkah bush, is it still a Christmas tree? Okay, so finally, the performative homogeneously heterogeneity of the latke welcomes our querying rather than posing the one big question. And consequently, serving as a POMO icon, or postmodern icon, for those of you who are not among the cognoscenti, as a POMO icon, it has the further advantage of being heimlich, homely, a food of poor people, which is a very good counterweight to the tropes of postmodernity that we see issuing from fancy-schmancy Parisian cafes. So with the latke, we break the hold on us of the kreplach, which conceals the mythical real, but we break the hold of the kreplach not with the Hamantasch, the schmeal, nor with some imported French confection with unpronounceable ingredients that deconstructs before we can eat it, but rather with the homely, heimlich potato latke.
What, of course, is overwhelmingly impressive is the extraordinary explanatory power of philosophy. As I understand it, it's real schmeal so long as you're happy. Thank you very much, Professor Schiemann. Our next speaker is Professor Amy Kaminsky, who is chair of the Department of Women's Studies and a faculty member on the Institute for Global Studies. Her research interests are in feminist analysis of Latin American literature and culture, and she is writing currently on Argentina. She comments, and I think we can all agree, that she's co-editor of a book that could win the prize for the worst title of the decade, Is Academic Feminism Dead? I don't intend to comment on that, but I do comment on the fact that she is working on Argentina. Now, those of us who are geographers at heart know the shape of Argentina. And it may be that that has led her to this sense of connection to the Hamantaschen, which I think she will now defend.
I do have a pocket. Unlike Chuck, who is a scientist, I don't use PowerPoint. But unlike Naomi, who is a philosopher and can't use any technology, I taught myself how to use an overhead projector 2 years ago, and I'm very proud of myself. Thank you very much. Well, I come here tonight as a feminist scholar to argue, nay, to prove, that as a symbol of feminist cooperation, anti-militarism, and harmony, the Hamantaschen is superior in every way to the Latke. There. As I was beginning to think about my participation in this event, I was heartened that my worthy colleague Naomi Sheeman, herself a feminist philosopher, suggested to me that we engage in a radical departure from the masculinist model of confrontational forensics. She thought that we might reconfigure the Latke Hamantaschen debate along the lines of the anti-binary feminist practice of cooperation and consensus. It would be a consciousness-raising moment for us all, a chance to transform the combative, patriarchal Latke Hamantaschen tradition. But alas, it was not meant to be. Caught in the grip of the oil-soaked Latke, my dear friend Naomi was too weak to resist the pull of its male-dominated history. It is therefore, with a certain sadness, bereft as I am of a partner in cooperation, that I find myself forced to opt for another feminist value, empowerment. Not aggressively, but certainly assertively, the Hamantaschen will, with a little help from me, demonstrate its essential superiority to the oil-rich but value-poor, oppressive, warmongering, divisive Latke. I will use an interdisciplinary approach, the hallmark of feminist scholarship, to prove that the Hamantaschen, as the culinary embodiment of the feminist values of harmony, common consent, and unity in diversity, is in all ways superior to the testosterone-imbued, male chauvinist, you should excuse the expression, pig, potato, pancake. I begin with feminist philology. Using a gynolinguistic analysis, and more specifically, a woman-centered etymology, I will demonstrate that the derivation of the term Hamantaschen itself brings together disparate strains of Judaism, obeying the feminist ethic of uniting differences. Gynolinguistics, a field I believe I have invented for this occasion, uncovers the true derivation of words whose history has long been masked by oppressive, patriarchal falsifications. You will have noted that I persist in using the term Hamantaschen as both singular and plural. This usage is deliberate, and if you grow up as I did, you too used it as a child, having learned it at your mother's knee. How many used to say Hamantaschen as the singular? Come on, hands up. You know you did. Okay. Later, you became educated by the repressive patriarchy, and you learned that this usage was incorrect. I will prove tonight that, in fact, the false singular Hamantasch is a hypercorrection, a usage that bows to the specious etymology that has obtained until this evening. For we have been told that Hamantaschen refers to Haman's hat. This is a base calumny. You are privileged here to witness the revelation of the word's true derivation, a derivation whose authenticity first spoke to me through the deeply held maternal singular, Hamantaschen. This hidden tradition of women's language was my first clue that the word has a deep feminine resonance. Hamantaschen, now I have to do this carefully. Hold on a second, because I just learned how to do this. Hamantaschen, as befits its woman-centered impulse to bring the family of Jews together, unites the three linguistic currents of Judaism: Hebrew, Ladino, and Yiddish. And it does so not by a reference to Haman, but to Esther. Behold. It's coming. Ha. Is this backwards? I told you I just learned how to use this. All right. Quickly. There we go. Ha. The Hebrew for the. Thank you very much. Manta, Ladino for shawl or wrapping. Shane, Yiddish for beauty or beautiful. Put it together, Hamantaschen. Hamantaschen. Clearly, the term refers not to Haman's hat, but to the beautiful wrap that Esther donned after satisfying the lustful gaze of her Lecheva husband. Symbolically rich, here we have the exquisite wrapper, the perfection of the circle of pastry that becomes a triangle surrounding a plump mound of sweet filling. What is clear from this irrefutable feminist etymological exposition is that the patriarchal linking of the luscious pastry with the no doubt greasy, dandruff-encrusted hat of the villain Haman is an androcentric canard perpetrated by a desperate patriarchy. Well, now that I have demonstrated beyond a doubt the superiority of the Hamantaschen in the symbolic realm, derived as it is from the unification of Judaism's three linguistic streams and from the authenticity of a woman-centered language, I will turn to the Hamantaschen in its historical role as the pastry of peace, using the methods of feminist historical analysis. I'll start with the latke, though. The latke represents one of history's earliest examples of the connection between oil and war in the Middle East. The Maccabees themselves were a rowdy bunch, and the Syrians who wrecked the temple were worse, a bunch of hooligans who made a terrible mess. And who do you think cleaned it up? You don't really believe that story about the hatsy-tatsy macho Maccabees with their brooms and scrub brushes, do you? Okay, I don't know if you can see that very well, but this is a falsification, as we've learned, of the Maccabee cleaning crew, revealed as a forgery, altered by a militant Latkeite in 1857, or was that 1587, one of those years. Founded in a history of battle, contestation, and bloodshed, it is not surprising that even today, the latke provokes scenes of hostility between the two warring camps, the partisans of sour cream and the devotees of applesauce. Perhaps only the vicious matzah brie controversy, savory or sweet, comes close to evoking the bellicosity of even the most benign among us. But let us not go down the path of still another contentious holiday comestible. The Hamantaschen alone brings together all Jews, and even a Gentile or two, under its large tent. That Gentile knows who I'm talking about. You may happily prefer poppy seed to prune, but the sweetness of the Hamantaschen opens our hearts and our mouths to the possibilities afforded by other fillings. Finally, I will demonstrate via a femino-culinary materialist analysis that the practice of latke and Hamantaschen production categorically proves the superiority of the latter, despite what Naomi says, because I never saw any guy performing latke making in anybody's kitchen. If you could do it on the grill, Okay. As any Hanukkah-besieged woman will tell you, the latke takes a dreadful toll on its maker. First, there is the inevitable, as Naomi noted, grated knuckle. As the latke drudge gets to the 7th or 8th potato, requiring her to ruin the nearest clean dish towel in order to prevent blood from sullying the growing wet heap of graying grated tubers. Then comes the burning and the tearing of the eyes as the onion goes in. Next, even if she can avoid being spattered by the boiling latke oil, her hair and clothing will still be permeated by the reeking smell. Finally, after she's finished with the process, the only latkes left for her to eat are cold and soggy. In contrast, the preparation of Hamantaschen is often cooperative, bringing whole families together, or at least a couple of people. Some preparing the pastry and others the filling. It provides the opportunity for developing upper body strength and rolling out the dough. And it encourages fulfilling behind-the-scenes nashing of its component parts. No one in her right mind would dip into unfried latke mush. In stark contrast to the drudgery and danger of latke production, the labor of baking Hamantaschen is unalienated. Nah. Particularly if one takes into account the you are what you eat factor. The Hamantaschen, neat bundle of sweetness, permits the woman who makes it to recreate her own likeness and pride, the shawl of Esther, and make of it a tasty fashion statement filled with poppy seed for a pebble texture, or with prune for a deep, mellow purple against the gold and pastry, or apricot for a subtle contrast of light on light. Moreover, Hamantaschen need a cooling down period so that the baker can enjoy the fruits of her labor as fully as those others who partake. To sum up, if we are to achieve the feminist utopia of anti-patriarchal cooperation, fulfillment for women, and the triumph of feminist truth over the brutality of male oppression and obfuscation, the Hamantaschen must be our yontif food of choice. Thank you.
Before this meeting this evening, while we were talking, I said to Amy that I thought I had to be careful in how I referred to feminist scholars and that I didn't want to say something which might be problematical. And she said, "Oh, you don't have to worry. There's nothing in what we say that would attack your ego." I also remark that despite what you've just heard, Amy has confessed that she eats latkes with sour cream and sugar. Our last speaker, Gary Gardner, is professor in the Department of Horticultural Science at the University of Minnesota. He's also a Harvard graduate, but he does spell it with an R. To know about Gary, I think you may remember his first paper in 1982, the use of a computerized spectroradiometer to predict phytochrome photoequilibria under polychromatic re-radiation. It made a very big impression, but it was an early paper, and over time he really expanded, and most recently has written on evidence that the phytochrome gene family in black cottonwood has one PHYA locus, two PHYB loci, but lacks members of the PHYCF and PHYE subfamilies, and I think that's true. As you might imagine, his research interests are in plant physiology and the mode of action of herbicides in plant growth regulators, photobiology, photomorphogenesis, photosynthesis, and naturally occurring compounds. That's in the real rather than the schmeal world. He has served in a number of administrative posts in the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences, and he's been active in establishing interdisciplinary activities here in our college, and I think in that he shares a lot of the interests of Chuck. Now, this, as you can imagine, is a marvelous background for defending, as he is about to defend, the latke.
Thank you, Professor Keller. What do I do to turn on the projector?
You hit
That one, okay.
you want, but you got to get your stuff. You got yours?
It's on. Oops.
No, it's on, but you want to get your slides going?
Just. There they are. First, I'll have to make a disclosure that this presentation is sponsored by the Red River Valley Potato Growers Association. And I know that I don't think Amy knew this when she called me, and I don't even think Ravelin knew this when she nominated me, but I learned how to debate when I was growing up by watching those famous televised debates. Remember those? No, not the Kennedy-Nixon debates, the ones shown here. The famous Mr. Ed versus Francis the Talking Mule debate. As some of you may know, and Professor Keller alluded to, until slightly over a year ago, I worked directly for Dean Muscatplatt as head of the Department of Horticultural Science. There is no truth to the rumor that I was fired because I debated him constantly and always won. Okay, now what are we celebrating? Well, Hanukkah. I have to actually thank Naomi for the right side of this. Hanukkah is about freedom. It's about victory over tyrants. It's about miracles. Purim is about women as property and a massacre. But it's really about oil. Okay, which came first? Well, the holidays, probably, if there's any historical accuracy, Purim came first by a few hundred years. But we're not asking about which came first in terms of the holidays. We're asking about which came first, the Latke or the Hamantaschen, or the Hamantaschen, as Professor Kaminsky said. Well, the Maccabee soldiers ate latkes made from cheese, vegetable, or fruits. So they ate latkes. The question is, were they potato latkes or not? The Hamantasch, the name itself, it originated in German Jewry. So we're talking 1,000, 1,500 years later, because it stands for Montasch, or poppy pockets, poppy seed pockets. So then the question is, when were potatoes available? Now, there are a couple of theories here. One theory, as I mentioned, many people seem to feel that the potato latke did not appear until the 16th century, when most people think potatoes were introduced to Europe from South America after Columbus's voyage. But there are a couple of alternative views. The first is that potatoes had a center of origin in Europe or the Middle East, and then became extinct in that region. Now, this slide shows some evidence for that view, some fossilized potatoes that were found in southern Ireland dating to the period before their first Old Europe extinction. Now, the second alternative view is that potatoes may have been brought across the Atlantic in the pre-Columbian period. Now, I have a question. I honestly don't know the answer. Are there any Old Testament scholars in the room? None? Really? Any New Testament scholars? Are there any scholars of the Book of Mormon here? Well, the Book of Mormon tells us that the Book of Mormon tells us that Jesus made a second appearance on earth in the New World. And perhaps when he did that, he took potatoes back with him to Jerusalem. We don't know that. Okay, now, which is better for you? Now, so the latke is potatoes, onions, and oil, but it's olive oil. And olive oil is even, Dr. Muskelblatt will tell you, is really good for you. That's the basis of the healthiness of Mediterranean cooking. And Hamantaschen is about wheat and opiates. and I want to point out, in my capacity as director of the Center for Plants and Human Health, of these choices, only the potato has the Center for Plants and Human Health seal of approval. Okay, the next question is, which is the more versatile? The latke can be sweet with applesauce or savory with sour cream. The Hamantasch is sweet, but if it were savory, it'd be a samosa. It wouldn't be a Hamantasch. So I think I've demonstrated the superiority of the latke based on priority, health, and versatility. But in thinking about this debate, in the context of last fall's political campaign, I became troubled at the whole notion of the debate. I realized that we have to change the tone. This is the tone we don't want to see in Minnesota. This is the tone that is resulting where we're at today. Minnesota needs a debater who will reach across party lines, cast aside the partisan bickering and posturing, and will work with Hillel to get things done. I will be that kind of debater. But how do we change the tone? And here we turn to the philosophy of Hegel, Marx, and Engels. Now, I want to make a disclaimer that if my teammate doesn't criticize my use or understanding of philosophical principles, I won't criticize her use or understanding of genetic engineering. Deal? Okay. Okay, so we turn to the dialectic. The thesis is the latke. The antithesis, of course, is the Hamantasch. But what is the synthesis? Now, since I'm fundamentally an experimental scientist, unlike my colleague Dr. Muskelblatt, I sought to develop the synthesis by experimentation. Maybe we should call it the NOSH, N-O-S-H synthesis, but I haven't figured out what that acronym stands for yet. So I started my experiments using local resources. Okay, first, if we start with some potato something, all right, here's a lefse. And of course, what goes inside a lefse, but it's lingonberry preserves. So if you open up a lefse on a plate, it's round, okay? You put the lingonberries in the middle. You fold it over. Maybe this is it. No, the plate is actually a Warren McKenzie plate, by the way. And what we have is the lefsetash, which we could name in honor of the great Swede who saved many, many Jews during the Holocaust, Raoul Wallenberg. So we'll call it the Wallenberg in his honor. But I have to say that when we created the lefsetash, its taste was really inferior to either the latke or the Hamantasch. Now, I have to, you know, I'm not a native Minnesotan, in case you didn't know. If I were, I would have deep fat fried this, and then it might have been, but that's for the state fair. So I then turned to another fundamental principle of biological science, evolution. Okay, so what are the basic principles of evolution? That there is variation, and then natural selection operates on that variation. So since I've already noted that the Hamantasch originated among German Jews, I started looking for variation in closely related pastries from Eastern Europe. So this slide shows Hamantasch-like pastries from the Kiev Delicatessen on West 7th Street in St. Paul. So these are Ukrainian. And if you start looking at a collection of these, now it's not, remember, this is a wild relative of the Hamantaschen. It's not a Hamantaschen. If you look at a collection of these, you see sort of different shapes. And if you look at the one on the back of the picture, well, it's not a triangle anymore. Maybe, maybe not. But we know that significant variation does occur among close relatives of the Hamantaschen. But now what about the Latke? In order to see whether variation is significant among Latkes, I decided to make direct observation of Latke preparation in a Jewish kitchen. Now, I want to make another disclaimer here. I used a hidden camera on my Jornada here to take images. Now, some of you I know may have had experience with hidden cameras as a research technique, and I apologize for their poor quality. Okay, so we start off with potatoes. These are, of course, Minnesota red potatoes from Red River Valley. And then grate them, okay? I did that and grated the onions, by the way. Frying. You get nice latke, not in focus, but a nice latke. Of course, it comes with sour cream. This is the raw materials, remember. And applesauce. Now, this applesauce, I hate to bring up authority here, Chuck, and with respect to your mother, but this applesauce was made by my 97-year-old Aunt Jeanette. This is my Aunt Jeanette. So, if this were a partisan debate, now remember, I've changed the tone, right? If this were how can you vote against my Aunt Jeanette at 97, right? She'll be 90, she's about 97 and a half now. However, so here's the latke with its accompaniments. The verb in the restaurant trade would be plated, right? But we're still looking for the synthesis, and that's not the synthesis, of course. I went back to the frying pan to search for variation. And looking in the frying pan, we found the basis for a new synthesis. And here it is, the Latke Tash. Let's see. Thank you.
For those of you who wondered, that's what the term photomorphogenesis means. Well, we have now completed the presentations of our four defenders and extollers of one side or another of this debate, and we come down to the end. We come down to decision-making, the decision-making at least for this evening. And I call upon you in the audience to think soberly about this issue for a few minutes, to try to digest all the things you've heard. We actually will be giving a quiz. And I think if you are now ready, I'm going to take these in alphabetical order. I will use the singular Hamantasch, but recognize that there are those of you who may prefer to call them Hamantaschen in the singular, and I don't want to stop you from doing that. And we will vote first on the Hamantasch by applause, and then on the Latke in the singular, to see if we have a consensus of any sort. So if I can hear it for the Hamantasch. All right. I've got it. If I could hear it for the Latke. Excuse me, there is a problem. Somebody voted twice. But I think that Udolph copped out on this 2 years ago, and he said, well, he thought it was a tie. But I heard more energy in the Hamantasch than in the Latke. Now, that may be my bending over backwards from my predisposition, but I would have to declare that this evening, but only this evening, we will give it to the Hamantasch and thank the Latke's people as well.
Hine matov umanaim shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is and pleasant when latkes and Hamantasch can dwell together. And we conclude this evening with a musical tribute to brotherhood and sisterhood.
I thank our students for our musical presentation. Let's hear one more time for Dr. Keller and our distinguished panel here. And on behalf of Hillel, I want to thank you all for coming. And again, I hope you can join us at our event with Dr. Ruth Westheimer on Sunday, March 2nd at Kaufman Union. At 4 o'clock lecture, and if you can join us too for the dinner, that would be nice at 6 o'clock. Thanks again for coming. The tickets, you can get tickets for the lecture outside there or calling the numbers here. And let's enjoy some latkes and Hamantaschen.
Jach nit woje fort in Stadt, halt sich in ein Park. Sie darf auf Korn kaufen, in Taschen backen. Hopp meine Hamantaschen, hopp meine Weiße, hopp meine Hamantaschen, hopp passiert der Meize. Es geht da Regen, es geht da Schnee, es gab it von der Dörfer. Jach ne viel schön kaufen in a Sach voll Hopp meine Hamantaschen, hopp meine Weiße, hopp mit meine Hamantaschen, hopp passiert der Meise. trag schon Schalachmanis zu den Jähren.
I do remember you.
Zwei, drei schwarze
Yeah, it's been a while.
Hamantaschen, halb Bräu, halb verbrennt.
Well, nice to see you. Thank you.
Hopp meine Hamantaschen, hopp meine Weiße, hopp mit meiner Hamantaschen, hopp passiert der Weize. Hopp meine Hamantaschen, hopp meine Weiße, hopp mit meiner Hamantaschen, hopp passiert der Weize.
חג פורים, חג גדול ליהודים, מסכות, רשמים, זמירות וריקודים. הבה נרישה רש רש רש, הבה נרישה רש רש רש, הבה נרישה רש רש רש, ברעשנים. הבה נרישה רש רש רש, הבה נרישה רש רש רש, הבה נרישה רש רש רש, ברעשנים. Purim's here, it's a holiday so dear. Mask and song, bring along, groggers loud and clear. Here go the groggers, rush, rush, rush. Here go the groggers, rush, rush, rush. Here go the groggers, rush, rush, rush. Purim time is here. Here go the groggers, rush, rush, rush. Here go the groggers, rush, rush, rush. Here go the groggers, rush, rush, rush. Purim time is here. חג גדול ליהודים, מסכות, רשמים, זמירות וריקודים. הבה נרישה רש רש רש, הבה נרישה רש רש רש, הבה נרישה רש רש רש, ברעשנים. הבה נרישה רש רש רש, הבה נרישה רש רש רש, הבה נרישה רש רש רש,